Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. For the first half hour of our show this evening, we have a couple of gentlemen who are members of the Senate Transportation Committee who are going to be discussing possible increases or changes in North Dakota's speeding fines. We have Senator Dave Elke, who is the chairman of the Transportation Committee. He's a Republican from Devil's Lake. We also have Senator George B. Sinner, a Democrat from Fargo. And welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And
I was curious, what's the B stand for?
So it stands for my grandfather's first name. His name was Bernard.
Bernard?
This is my maternal grandfather, who was a physician in Kentucky.
Bernard. It's pronounced Bernard. That's great.
That's right.
You know what that makes me think of is the Shootist movie, where John Wayne. It was John Wayne's last movie, and he played a character who was an assassin. Well, not an assassin.
He's a
gunfighter.
really,
he's a gunfighter. Yes, that's a better term. And his name was John Bernard Brooks in the movie. And I always thought Bernard was a cool way of pronouncing it. Better than Bernard. I knew a guy named Bernard in high school. I didn't like him that much.
I think he's French.
Thank you.
I think Bernard.
Thank you. Most people say
cooler.
Bernard, and I get a little offended by that.
Bernard is a much better way of pronouncing it.
And of course, that's Senator George Bernard Sinner.
Yes, sir.
Not Senator Dave Bernard Elke.
The Bernard Shaw was another one, wasn't it?
Bernard
George. Bernard Shaw.
Yeah, we also have with us my co-host, Mr. Gary Amneth. He's a Bismarck businessman, a former chairman of the North Dakota Republican Party, and a serial entrepreneur, as he likes. And it's the truth too, because he's flitting from one thing to another.
That's the problem.
First of all, before we get to our subject for the evening, we'd like to discuss a little bit about what happened in the legislature today. One of the things that caught some interest today was the Parks and Recreation budget, and this is why, because the Parks and Recreation budget includes the purchase of a marina that's part of Fort Stevenson State Park. There's $350,000 in the budget to buy a private marina, which is on state land. The reason that's given for the efficacy of the state buying a private business is that it is located on state land, and apparently the existing owner can't get a satisfactory lease arrangement to make a long-term investment on the property in order to keep it in private hands. So they want to sell it, and the Parks and Rec Department is, at least in this version of the Parks and Rec budget, is going to have some money to purchase it. There's another item as well for the Parks and Rec budget to make a rather unusual acquisition. The budget also includes $42,500 to buy a collection of military artifacts that is now on display at the Fort Abraham Lincoln State Park. This collection is apparently the work of a gentleman who started his collection quite as a young man in Mandan, who started as a gatherer of trinkets and artifacts when he was watching the Civilian Conservation Corps workers work on projects.
We're getting an echo here.
Yeah, I'm getting echo here. Excuse me. It makes it rather difficult to speak.
Sounds like there's two of you.
They might not be hearing it on the show,
singing
but
a song or something.
Follow ahead, and they'll get her tweaked shortly.
Okay. Well, anyway, this gentleman who owns this collection had a stroke, and his family wants to sell the collection, and they've asked the state to buy it. And it's been there's $42,500 included in the Parks and Rec budget for the state to purchase this. Until the Senate received this budget, it also had money in it to buy a ski resort in northeastern North Dakota near Walhalla. That's been taken out. And in the category of unusual purchases, in the State Historical Society budget the other day, there is $100,000 to buy the Lawrence Wilk Farmstead near Strasburg, along with $85,000 in operating expenses. The biggest event in the legislature today was the approval of the governor's education finance package. That includes a number of elements. It more than doubles the amount of state aid payments that schools are going to get for every student they enroll. It includes an amount of money, a large amount of money, about $700 million over 2 years for property tax reduction. The state aid payments per student that schools will get will rise from roughly close to $4,000 to $8,800 per student in the next school year, a little over $9,000 in the 2014-15 school year. The big debate in the legislature, in the Senate, about this subject today was what the how the legislation should set a minimum teacher pay. Right now, the minimum teacher salary in North Dakota for a public school is $22,000 a year. The legislation raises that to $27,500 a year. There was a proposal supported by Senate Democrats in the legislature to raise it to $32,000 a year, which is the approximate average annual wage in the state of North Dakota. That was defeated. And now we'll turn to our subject for this evening, and that is increased speeding fines or changes in speeding fines. There are two plans here. One was advanced by the North Dakota House, and we'll get a description of that shortly. The second was come up with by the North Dakota Senate Transportation Committee, and we have again with us Senator Dave Elke, who is the chairman of the committee. He's a Republican from Devils Lake. We also have with us another committee member, and he is also a member of the conference committee that's going to be working on this issue, Senator George Bernard Sinard, a Democrat from Fargo. Boy, I love saying Bernard.
I do too. I think I'm going to call him that all the time.
Senator Elke, what is the Senate plan on speeding fines?
Well, I don't know if there's exactly a total plan on speeding fines, but I can tell you that through our testimony we found out that speeding violations in North Dakota are really kind of a non-entity. I thought it was really interesting. The people that testified in front of us ranged from just the average person on the street to also up to and including highway patrol and other law enforcement people. And it was really interesting. One day after we finished our testimony, a group of students had come in from Thompson, North Dakota, and they sat down for just the tail end of the testimony. And then as we closed the hearing, we sat there for a while and visited with them, and we asked them, well, what do you think about speeding in North Dakota? And they just all shrugged their shoulders. Well, it's no big deal. I mean, these are high school kids, And they said, well, yeah, it's not really a big deal, $10, $20, what's no big fine. And I said, well, okay, you live right on the border of Minnesota. So occasionally you must wander over to Minnesota, maybe to you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or something over there. There's what have you. I said, what happens when you drive across a bridge? Oh, we put on the brakes. We slow it down. And we make sure our seatbelt's on. That issue of knowing that the speeding fines in Minnesota were significantly higher. We're talking seriously higher, much higher than we're actually proposing now. So we did have a bill. If you look at our speeding fines now, and of course, I'll challenge either you or Gary Dale to interpret what that says.
I can do that only because I have the Highway Patrol cheat sheet here.
And even the cops, they have a cheat sheet in their vehicle because they're going, okay, you went how fast? Let's a minute. I got to figure this out now. What our plan is so simple right now, and I'm going to actually let Bernard here kind of jump into it and explain what it is, because it was partly his effort and Senator Flacco's to come up with the correct amendment that actually, we think has a good chance to make a difference. It's a little higher than what the House came across with, but frankly, it's so simple that anybody can understand it. So
and I'm going to give credit to Senator Flacco, I think, for this idea. I won't say it was mine.
Well, you should anyway because you have a cooler middle name than he does.
I don't know what his
I don't know his middle name.
I don't either, but I'm sure it's not as cool as Bernard.
Keep in mind that Senator George Sinner, the famous George Sinner. So
yeah, it was, as a matter of fact, it was 50 years ago this fall. My dad was first elected to the state senate.
Wow,
in 1962, and so that was a pretty fun story to tell people on election night. But we don't go into that. Our plan is really basic. Whatever the posted speed limit is, that's the basis of the fine, plus $2 for every mile you're over the limit. So if you're going 75 and a 65, your fine is 65 plus $20. You're paying $85 for going 75 and a 65.
Ouch.
And let me tell you that in South Dakota, if you're going 75 and a 65, your fine is $105. In Minnesota, it's about $150.
I thought it was the death penalty in Minnesota.
I think I'm going to slow down when I drive Minnesota.
I think it's interesting you brought that up because I'd like to talk about death penalty. Not
related to speeding, I hope.
Well, absolutely related to speeding, and has nothing to do with a fine, but it talks about how quick things can happen. You know, at 60 miles an hour, you're actually traveling 88 feet per second. Now, assuming there's somebody else coming the other direction at 88 feet per second, now that you're actually doubling or having the distance. So in 44 feet, it's half a second. So let's pretend that somebody 150 feet away switches lanes. Now they've just switched lanes, Dale.
Less than 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what are you going to do? Well, it's too late. Less than, it's already 2.5 seconds. You're dead, man. That's...
Yeah, and I haven't even finished the first word of my text.
And then when I talked to a lot of students because I sell insurance, and so they always ask me to come in and talk about insurance, and invariably I end up talking about fines. And a lot of times we're in a room that's about 25 feet wide. And I say, now, if a vehicle's going 60 miles an hour, how long do you think it takes them to go across this room? Well, it's a quarter of a second. That is not any time at all. The time to react is a death penalty if you're speeding. And if you're going too fast for the conditions that are available to you, you may as well call it a death penalty in some cases. So if some people are willing to slow down to avoid paying $85 on a speeding ticket, I guess I don't have a big problem with that. Now back it off to $25 speeding ticket in a 25 zone. It's $25 plus $10 for going 30 miles an hour or whatever. Is that too much to save some lives?
Say, do you know how many speeding tickets our Highway Patrol issued last year?
I have no idea. I can't.
42,000.
I'll be darned.
In North Dakota. And that's 10% over the previous year. And that's just the Highway Patrol. 42,000 speeding tickets.
And that's at our present level of fines, which is pretty cheap.
Yes.
Well, I hear stories all the time of people saying, oh, I was listening to some guys from out of state, and one guy was on the phone, he was calling home or telling somebody, yeah, I got a speeding ticket. Well, it's like $20 and just laughing about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a joke. There is that attitude out there, I think, on some people that say, we got to keep these speeding tickets affordable. But at the same time,
I fall into that category within reason.
I had one business leader tell me that in North Dakota it pays for him to speed.
Really?
Because he saves so much time speeding, and the fine is so minor.
We should ask, does this plan or this proposal do anything to your penalty points?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't. That
we left the points alone.
Did you consider changing the points?
Well, there's some other issues out there that dealing with points, particularly on suspended licenses. So we didn't want to address that in here. Frankly, points can really be awfully nasty for your license, and it can be awfully nasty for your insurance. And this is probably a start. I think any of us that have been in this process for any length of time, and Dale, you certainly can attest to this, 2 years from now, we're going to probably make some more adjustments. in some way, shape, or form, and that'll have to do with a lot of legislation that we're passing right now. You know, sometimes we don't do everything exactly right. Once in a while we get it just perfect, but occasionally, we have to come back and fix some things that were inadvertently not exactly the way we hoped they would be in the first place. But I don't know if you want to call that job security or something. But
do you know the last time the speeding fines were changed?
Well, it's been a long time.
1979.
My goodness.
Guess who the intern was for the Transportation Committee in 1979?
Well, it wasn't me.
It was me.
It was you.
It was me.
So being on the Transportation Committee must have some special significance for you then.
Yes, it does.
I'll be
Matter of
darned.
fact, it does.
That's outstanding. Yeah. Oh, have either of you gentlemen heard any reaction from folks on the street about the idea of raising speeding
one of the
fines
members of our committee kept telling us, I didn't have anybody any of my constituents telling me they wanted me to raise the speeding fine, so I'm against it. People don't come out and tell you that. But in this case, I think both the chairman and I feel this is a safety issue. Our traffic counts are absolutely going through the roof. In the last year, the citizens and the drivers in North Dakota drove over 1 billion more miles than the previous year on the roads in North Dakota. 1 billion miles. That's according to the Highway Patrol.
A billion miles. Holy
a
smokes.
Billion miles.
No wonder our roads are shot.
It's kind of interesting. I've been on our Lake Region Search and Rescue team since 1981. I was one of the charter members. And this last 2 years, we've had less calls for search and rescue activities to pull people out of the lake, driven in off, And the only reason for that is because construction has forced them to drive slower, And I know now that the roads are better, we're going to have more calls, And believe me, when they go off now, they're not only going to hit the water, they're going to probably roll twice before they do hit it. So, we're going to be pulling bodies out a lot of times instead of pulling live people out of vehicles. So it's scary stuff. I always tell these kids when I teach these classes, I said, when you have a key to the car, as soon as you put it in the ignition, you're driving a loaded weapon. You can kill somebody. That might be someone in your vehicle, it might be someone on a bike, it might be someone else driving the other direction. But you have to be thinking about that all the time. So you need to drive for conditions. You need to, watch the speeding ticket, the speeding, and do your due diligence and use your common sense. Now I know that's really hard for youngsters, especially the ones I'm talking to. They're all full of hormones and they're good to go. But they need to understand as well. And the quicker they learn that situation, the better they are. My daughter was walking home from school at about 14 years old, and she saw an intersection accident happen in front of her. Boy, I'll tell you what, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to her driving career. She was very careful right from the get-go. And I've always told my clients, if your kid has an accident and he doesn't get hurt and doesn't hurt anybody else and all you've lost is dollars and cents, it's probably the best experience they can have because they will be a better driver after that because they learn how quickly things can happen. They don't understand that when they're first driving. So if we can put a little bit of fear into them that, I don't want to have to pay $50 or $80 or whatever it is out of my pocket because I know Dad isn't going to pick it up, maybe that's going to help.
What does this do for the ability of home rule cities and counties to?
I'm glad you asked that. That was actually in the bill that came from the House, was to allow home rule cities to do their own thing. And we amended that out, and this is what the bill will be. I got a story about that. A few years ago when that was thrown out in the court in Fargo, 3 of my family members got checks from the city. All made out to each of them, and I was the guy who paid every one of those fines.
That's great.
I lost both ways.
It's that's a tough issue because I understand that cities might say, we really want to control speeding here. Well, if we boost the speeding tickets and they can collect that same amount of fine, at least it's more than what they're being able to do right now. But we didn't like the idea that you can pull into a town and suddenly it goes from 65 to 45 or 50 or 25 or something, and you're, suddenly caught in that no man's land right there, and you're kind of stuck with whatever fines they give you. We kind of wanted to be a little bit careful about that.
I was just wondering, because obviously in the cities you're not going to have the really big, juicy speeding tickets because the speed limits aren't high enough.
Our goal isn't here to have big, juicy speeding tickets or raise revenue. Our goal is safety. And every statistic will tell you the faster they go, the more danger the road is. And that's why I think this system is kind of works toward that advantage or to that goal.
And what is the minimum fine for driving in the school zone?
Right now it's $80. This one doubles it.
Of any speeding over the limit, or just? I know while you're looking up there, Senator.
Speeding in the school zone, I believe, is.
Well, right now it's lower. It's in the construction zone right now. It's $80, but in a school zone it's less. And that's always been kind of a sore point among some folks, is that school zone speed.
Highway construction speed zones right now is $80. I know the school zone goes to $80 on the new bill.
On the new bill, yes, but on the existing bill.
On the existing one, you're right. It is less than that. I can tell you.
I know at one point, Little Prairie Rose south of Bismarck.
10 mile, it's $40 plus $1 for each mile over the speed limit.
Yeah, so you got to really be cracking it to get up to $80.
$212 in Minnesota.
Yes, I know in Minnesota it's enormous.
Well, and one thing I've noticed in our community, at least, is that school zones are monitored quite well.
Yes.
You're way more likely to get a ticket blasting through a school zone than you are, going at 5 miles and over the limit in some other part of town. So I think law enforcement understands that an awful, better too.
You've been listening to Senator Dave Elke. He's a Republican from Devils Lake and the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. We also have had with us another member of the Transportation Committee, Senator George Bernard Sinner, a Democrat from Fargo. I just love saying Bernard. It's just the greatest middle name in the world.
You're stuck, Senator.
This is Dale Wetzel of the Legislature Today Radio Hour, and we're going to be coming back shortly with a discussion with Andy Peterson, the president of the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce.